Picture the darkest room you've ever slept in. Now make it darker. Take away the streetlight bleeding through the curtains, the standby glow of the television, the phone charging on the nightstand. Take away the nightstand. Take away the glass in the window, because glass is for churches and rich men, and replace it with a wooden shutter that rattles when the wind comes down off the moors. Add the smell of tallow smoke and wet wool and 600 years of stone. Add a bell that will ring at 2 a.m, whether you're asleep or not. Add the knowledge sitting in your chest like a swallowed stone that you've not slept properly in 3 nights, and that tonight, if your hands shake the way they shook this evening, a man might die because of it. That's a Benedictine abbey in Yorkshire in the year 1373, one of the richest, most disciplined, most carefully engineered institutions in medieval England, a place built, among other things, around the science of sleep, a place where men woke deliberately in the middle of every single night for their entire lives and somehow slept better than we do, a place that had a cure for insomnia, a real one that worked so well that modern sleep researchers, 6.5 centuries later, would rediscover pieces of it and act surprised. We're going back there tonight, not as historians reading about herb gardens. We're living it. One winter, one person, one pair of cracked and freezing hands, everything he would have smelled, carried, feared, and finally slept through. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether you actually sleep to them, or whether you're all lying awake at 3 a.m, wide-eyed, learning about medieval sedatives that could stop a grown man's heart. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The problem starts with a bell you cannot hear yet. You're lying on your back in the dark with your eyes open, and this is the 3rd night, and the unfairness of it is almost funny. Almost. You're 16 years old. You work 14 hours a day. Your shoulders ache from carrying water. Your knuckles are split from the cold. Your feet have not been warm since Michaelmas. By every law of the body, you should sleep like a dropped stone. The old men around you do. You can hear them. Brother Morris, who is 71 and has a wound in his hip from a war he won't name, sleeps 3 beds away, and his breathing is slow and even and infuriating. The whole dormitory sleeps, 40 men on straw mattresses in one long stone room, and every single one of them is unconscious except you. You, Thomas of Brakenrig, assistant to the infirmarian, the boy whose entire job is helping to put other people to sleep. You cannot sleep. And here is the part that makes your stomach tighten in the dark. Tomorrow before dawn, Brother Anselm is going to mix dwale for old Brother Cuthbert, whose leg has gone black below the knee and has to come off. Dwale, the sleeping draught, the one with hemlock in it, the one where the difference between a man sleeping through his own amputation and a man never waking up again is measured in spoonfuls. And Anselm's eyes are failing, which means the measuring will be done by your hands, which shook this evening when you poured the vinegar, your hands at the end of a 3rd night without sleep. That is the situation. That is what you're lying here with. The dormitory is cold in a way that has texture. The cold comes up through the straw mattress and through the 2 woolen blankets and settles against your spine like a hand. You are sleeping in your habit, because everyone does. Because undressing for bed is something the rule does not really allow, and the Yorkshire winter does not really permit. The wool is damp. Wool is always slightly damp from November to March. You have stopped noticing it the way you've stopped noticing the smell of the room, which is 40 unwashed men tallow, straw, and the faint sweetness of the apples stored in the undercroft below, and which would knock a modern visitor flat. Somewhere down the long room, someone turns over. Straw crunches. A rope bed frame creaks. A sound like a small door opening. Then silence again, except for the wind working at the shutters, patient, insistent, like something that wants to be let in. You do what you always do on the bad nights. You start counting the psalms of the day backward. It is supposed to be soothing. Tonight the words keep dissolving into the image of a brass measuring spoon and a black glazed jug, and the sentence Anselm said to you this evening mildly, without looking up from the mortar. Tomorrow you will pour. My eyes are done with fine work in candlelight. Tomorrow you will pour. 3 grains too many of henbane, and Cuthbert's breathing slows and stops. 3 grains too few, and he wakes on the table with the saw halfway through the bone. And you have heard what that sounds like once in your first month here, through 2 closed doors, and you've been trying to unhear it ever since. You press your palms flat against your eyes until colours bloom in the blackness. Sleep. You just need to sleep. Everyone in this building knows how to sleep. It is practically the family trade. Because here is the thing about this place, the thing nobody tells you before you arrive. A medieval monastery is a machine built out of time. Everything here is measured, divided, rationed, scheduled. Food is scheduled, speech is scheduled, silence is scheduled, and sleep most of all, is scheduled with a precision that would impress a railway engineer 500 years before railways exist. The whole community goes down together after Compline in the last grey light of the winter afternoon around 6 o'clock. The whole community rises together in the black middle of the night, around 2, when the bell rings for Matins, and stands in a freezing church chanting psalms for an hour and more. And then, and this is the part that sounds like madness until you understand it, the whole community goes back to bed and sleeps again until first light. 2 sleeps. Every night. By design. Broken sleep. Engineered on purpose. And the men here have never heard of insomnia as a disease of ordinary life, because for most of them it barely exists. They lie down, they sleep, the bell tears them out of it. They pray, they lie down, they sleep again. 70-year-old men with war wounds do this every night and thrive. And you, 16, healthy, exhausted, lie here like a plank. There's a name for what you have, and you will learn it properly this winter along with the cure. The infirmary books call it vigilia, watching, the disease of watching. The physicians say it comes from an excess of hot, dry humours rising to the brain, from choler, from too much thinking, from grief, from love, from fear. They're wrong about the humours. They're not wrong about the fear. The bell rings, not gently. Nothing about this bell is gentle. It is the Matins bell, and it exists to reach into unconsciousness and drag men out by the collar, and it hangs in a tower 40 feet above your head, and when it goes, the sound comes down through the stone of the building itself, so you feel it in the frame of the bed before you properly hear it. Around you the dormitory heaves. 40 men sit up in the dark in a single ragged movement, like a field of wheat pushed by wind. Nobody speaks. Speaking is forbidden. There is only the rustle of straw, the creak of rope, the small groans of old knees, and the shuffling of feet finding the night stairs. You are the only one awake, and you are the most tired man in the room. You stand. The floor through your shoes is like standing on the surface of a frozen pond. You fall into the line of dark shapes moving toward the stairway, and the cold air of the stairwell hits your face, and somewhere below, through the arch, you can see it, the single point of light in the whole black world. One lamp burning in the choir of the abbey church. 2:00 in the morning, December the 3rd, 1373. Welcome to the strangest sleep laboratory ever built. The night stairs are the coldest place in the abbey. They were built that way, more or less. A stone spiral connecting the dormitory directly to the south transept of the church, so that a monk can go from his bed to his prayers without ever stepping outside. And the architects who raised this place 150 years ago made the stairwell narrow and unheated, because heat was for the sick and the guests, not for men in the middle of their vows. The walls sweat. Your breath comes out in a cloud you can't see and feel, condensing on your own lips. You keep one hand on the central pillar as you descend, because the steps are worn into shallow, smooth troughs by a century and a half of feet, doing exactly this, every night, in exactly this darkness, and a boy broke his ankle here 2 winters ago and limps to this day. Then the transept opens around you, and the church swallows the whole line of you like a whale taking in water. You have been here 14 months, and this still does something to your chest. The nave of this church is longer than the entire village you grew up in, 280 feet from the west door to the high altar. The vaulting overhead disappears into blackness 60 feet up, higher than any tree you had seen before you came here, and in the dark it might as well be the night sky itself, except the night sky does not throw your own footsteps back down at you. Every sound multiplies. 40 pairs of shuffling feet become an army. A single cough rolls down the nave like a wave and comes back diminished, apologetic. One lamp burns above the altar, a red star in a stone universe, and by its light and the light of 2 candles at the choir stalls, 80 men, the monks from the dormitory and the lay brothers from their separate range, fold themselves into carved oak seats polished black by generations of hands, and begin to sing. Domine, labia mea aperis. Lord, open my lips. And here is what nobody tells you about Matins. The thing you could never have guessed from the outside. Half these men are still asleep. Not metaphorically. The chant is designed for it. It moves at the pace of slow breathing, phrases long as oars pulling through water, one side of the choir answering the other, back and forth, and the old monks have sung these psalms so many thousands of times that the words live somewhere below thinking, in the same part of the body that keeps the heart going. You have watched Brother Morris sing an entire psalm with his one eye shut and the other at half-mast, and seen him surface at the end of it like a man rising through warm water, mildly surprised to find himself vertical. The church knew. That's the thing. The men who designed this life 800 years before tonight, Benedict of Nursia writing his rule in an Italian hill town around the year 540, they knew exactly what they were doing to the human body, and they did it anyway, and they did it carefully. Benedict's rule dedicates entire chapters to sleep, what hour to rise, that the brothers should sleep clothed so they can rise without delay, that the young should not have beds next to each other, but should be spread between the beds of the old, that a candle should burn in the dormitory all night, that the monks should be woken gently for the work of God, and, this is written down, that they should be permitted to encourage each other, because the sleepy make excuses. The sleepy make excuses. 6th century. Some things do not change. You do not sleep through matins. You have never once slept through matins. which the novice master mistook for piety in your first months, and praised you for it in chapter, and you stood there with your ears burning, unable to explain that it is not devotion keeping your eyes open, it is whatever is broken in you. The same broken thing that keeps them open in the dormitory. Tonight you stand in your stall, low down at the end where the youngest go, and you mouth the Latin, and you watch one candle flame bend and recover in a draught, bend and recover, and you think about hemlock, dwale. You should know this word because it is one of the genuinely astonishing artifacts of the medieval world, and almost nobody outside of a few manuscript libraries has ever heard of it. It is a surgical anaesthetic, a recipe for one at least copied into English medical manuscripts through the 14th and 15th centuries, and it goes like this more or less. Because you have read it so many times the words have grooves in your mind. Take the gall of a boar. 3 spoonfuls of hemlock juice. 3 spoonfuls of wild neep, that's bryony. 3 of lettuce. 3 of poppy. 3 of henbane. 3 of isil, which is vinegar. Mix them, boil them a little, and put 3 spoonfuls of the mixture into a patel of good wine, and give the man to drink by the fire until he falls asleep. Then, the recipe says, with a calm that stops your breath every time, then men may safely carve him. Then men may safely carve him. And when the carving is done, you wake him with vinegar and salt rubbed on his cheekbones and temples, and he will remember, if you have done everything right, nothing at all. Hemlock, the plant that killed Socrates. Henbane, which in large doses stops the lungs. Opium poppy, which the infirmary grows in its own walled bed and harvests with a reverence otherwise reserved for relics. Any one of the 3 can kill on its own. Together, held in balance, cut with wine and lettuce and vinegar, they open a door in a man's mind and close it gently behind him, and he sleeps through what no waking creature could endure. The balance is the whole art. There is no scale fine enough for this work, not here. There is a set of horn spoons, worn to translucence at the edges, and there is the eye and the hand of the man pouring, and there is the size of the patient and the strength of his heart, and the colour of his face, and 40 other small judgments that Brother Anselm carries in his head the way the old monks carry the Psalms. And tomorrow, because Anselm's eyes have finally clouded past the point of fine work, the pouring hand is yours. The chant turns a corner into the Te Deum, and the whole choir stands, and you stand a half-second late, and the monk beside you, Brother Odo, who is 30 and ambitious, and files away other men's faults the way a squirrel files nuts, turns his head just enough to let you know he saw. That's all. Just the turn of a head. In a world without speech, a turned head is a paragraph. You feel it land on the pile of everything else. The shaking hands, the 3rd sleepless night, the crumb of bread you dropped at supper that Odo also saw, and you fix your eyes on the candle flame and sing. Matins here on an ordinary winter night runs a little over an hour. On feast days it can run 2. When it ends, the 80 men do not disperse to work or food. They file back up the night stairs, back into the long cold room, back onto the straw, and within what seems like moments the breathing around you goes long and slow again, because these men have done the single most counterintuitive thing in the whole history of sleep. They have taught their bodies that waking at 2 in the morning is not an emergency. Think about that. Really hold it for a second, because it is the seed of everything this story is about. When you wake at 2 or 3 in the morning, in your bed, in your century, what happens? Your eyes open, and within a few breaths, your mind announces the time like a sentence being passed. 3 a.m., and then the arithmetic starts. 4 hours until the alarm, 3.5 if I fall asleep right now. And then the fear of not sleeping arrives, and the fear of not sleeping is the one thing on this earth guaranteed to prevent sleep, and you lie there in a small private panic that feeds on itself, in a room with a glowing clock face watching you like an eye. These men wake at 2 in the morning, and it means nothing, because it is supposed to happen. There is no arithmetic, there is no clock face, there is no failure, because the waking is not a malfunction, it is the plan. They rise, they sing, they lie back down, and their bodies, never having been taught that the middle of the night is a battlefield, simply resume. You know all this. You've watched it work on everyone but yourself for 14 months. You lie back down on your straw in the dark third night and listen to 40 men fall away from the world like leaves coming off a tree, and you stare up toward a ceiling you cannot see, and somewhere below and to the east, in a small stone room that smells of vinegar and crushed seeds, a black glazed jug is waiting for the morning, and your hands folded on your chest like a dead man's will not stop their small tremor. The candle at the end of the dormitory gutters, Benedict's candle, burning all night for 800 years so that no monk need ever wake in perfect darkness and be afraid. It does not help you. Nothing has helped you yet. But the man who is going to teach you the cure is asleep 60 feet away, and in about 3 hours the bell is going to ring again. The bell for prime comes at first light, which in a Yorkshire December means somewhere around 8. A grudging grey seeping through the shutter slats like water through a cracked bowl. You must have slept in the end. An hour, maybe 2, that thin, gravelly surface sleep that leaves you more aware of having lost the night than of having rested. Your eyes feel like they've been rolled in sand. Your jaw aches from clenching. When you sit up, the cold air finds the gap at the back of your collar instantly. A wet finger down your spine. Prime is short, then chapter, where the community gathers and faults are confessed and the day's work assigned, and where you stand at the back and pray, genuinely and specifically pray that Odo does not raise the matter of the boy who stood late. At the Te Deum, he doesn't. He is saving it. You can tell he is saving it the way you can tell a jug has more in it by the weight. And then, at last, you are released to the one place in this entire complex where you almost make sense. The infirmary stands east of the church, connected to the cloister by a covered passage, and it is a separate world with separate rules, and the first rule of that world hits you before you even reach the door. The smell. Everywhere else in the abbey smells of cold stone, incense, tallow, and men. The infirmary passage smells of vinegar first, sharp enough to make your eyes prickle, and under the vinegar, in layers, you have learned to read the way a forester reads tracks. The dusty sweetness of dried camomile hanging in bunches from the passage beams. The dark, bitter, almost dirty smell of valerian root, which Brother Anselm calls the most useful and worst-smelling servant God ever gave a physician, and which smells, there is no kind way to say this, like old sweat and wet dog. The green sharpness of crushed rue. Wood smoke. Real wood smoke. Because the infirmary is one of only 3 buildings in the abbey where a fire burns all day, all winter, by ancient right, because the sick and the old are excused from the war against comfort that everyone else here is enlisted in, and under everything, faint, persistent, this smell of the sick themselves, poultices, old linen, the particular sweetish smell of Brother Cuthbert's leg, which you have stopped letting yourself think about with the front of your mind. You push open the door and the warmth lays itself against your face like a cloth, and your whole body performs a small involuntary shudder of gratitude. And Brother Anselm says, without turning around, "You didn't sleep." He's standing at the long work table under the east window where the light is best, grinding something in the big stone mortar with a wooden pestle worn to the shape of his grip. He is 62 years old. He has been infirmarian of this house for 28 years. He is small, round-shouldered, bald as a river stone, and his hands, when they are not working, have a fine constant tremor that he pretends not to have, and you pretend not to see. His eyes are the colour of skimmed milk at the edges now. Cataracts, though that is not a word either of you knows. He calls it the veil. I slept a little, you say? You slept like a heron, standing up, one eye open, ready to stab something. He tips his head at the bench. Sit. Eat that. That is a heel of yesterday's bread and a cup of warm milk with honey in it, sitting on the bench end nearest the fire, and the fact that it is there, already poured, already warmed, means he decided before you arrived that this conversation was going to happen. You sit. The bench is smooth and dark with age. The cup is warm in your two hands, and the warmth crawls up through your split knuckles and into your wrists, and it is somehow this, not the sleeplessness, not the fear, but the plain animal kindness of a warm cup, that puts a sudden alarming heat behind your eyes. You drink so he won't see your face. 3 nights, Anselm says. It is not a question. He goes back to grinding. The pestle makes it sound, stone circling stone, sh crunch, patient as tide. Since Cuthbert's leg turned 3 nights. You think I don't count? I count everything. It's the whole trade, counting. Shh, crunch. Grains, drops, breaths, nights. A physician who can't count is a gravedigger with better wages. I'm all right. You're not all right, and if you say something that stupid again, I'll dose you with mustard. He sets the pestle down and turns and looks at you with those milk-edged eyes that still see more than most men's clear ones. Hold out your hand, you know better than to argue. Ooh, you hold it out. In the grey window light, the tremor is small but visible. A fine, fast shiver at the fingertips, like the surface of water when someone walks across the floor. Anselm looks at it for a long moment. Then he does something you don't expect. He holds out his own hand next to yours, and there they are side by side above the scarred tabletop. Your hand, 16 years old, shaken from fear and no sleep. His hand, 62, shaken from age, and 30 winters of this work. Between the two of us, he says, we have one steady hand, and it doesn't exist. He almost smiles. So we're not going to rely on hands today. Hands are the last resort of a man who didn't prepare. Come here. And this is the moment, though you don't know it yet, that the winter turns. Because what Anselm shows you at that table over the next hour is not courage and it is not talent. It is a system, and it is the same system that runs the whole abbey. The same intelligence that breaks the night into 2 sleeps and fills the space between with chant, applied to a jug of poison, and later you will understand it would apply to you at the same time. He does not hand you the horn spoons and tell you to be careful. Instead, he takes the black glazed jug and a second jug plain and a row of small glazed cups, and he says, "We measure nothing at the table. We measure everything now, in the morning, in the light twice, and what we carry to the sick man is already finished. A tired man pouring at a bedside makes a tired man's pour. So the pour happens here, where there is no bedside, no groaning, no family watching, no fear. You will fill the cup. I will check the level against the mark. Then you will pour it back and fill it again, and if the second pour matches the first, the measure is true. If they do not match, we begin again, and we begin again all morning if we must, because there is no hurry. Cuthbert's leg has waited a week. It can wait for careful hands. Fill, check, pour back, fill again. Match. He makes you do it with plain vinegar first, 10 times. The vinegar fumes sting your nose, and the sharp smell cuts through the fog in your head like a lamp in a cellar. The cups have a thin scored line inside them, a mark fired into the glaze, and your first pour rides above the line, and your second sits below it, and your third and fourth are wild, because you are watching your own shaking hand instead of the falling liquid. And Anselm says, mildly, watching you fail, stop looking at your hand. Your hand is not your business. The line is your business. The hand belongs to God and the night you didn't sleep. The line belongs to you. Fifth pour. You look only at the line. The liquid climbs the glaze, thin and bright, and something odd happens. Because your whole attention is on the line, the hand, unwatched, unjudged, steadies itself. Not completely. Enough. The vinegar kisses the mark and stops. There, says Anselm. Again. Sixth pour. True. Seventh. True. Your breathing has slowed without your permission. The fire cracks and settles. Somewhere behind you in the long room, old Brother Morris is telling another old man a story you've heard 4 times about a horse, and the murmur of it is like a river 2 fields away. 8th pour. True. Now, Anselm says, you know the first thing. He takes the cup from you, wipes it with a linen rag, sets it down. You thought the danger was your hand. The danger was never your hand. The danger is attention in the wrong place. A man who watches his own fear pours fear. A man who watches the line pours true. He turns back to his mortar, dismissing you toward the woodpile with a flick of 2 fingers, and then he adds, not looking at you, in the same voice he'd used to note the weather. It's the same with sleep, boy. Exactly the same. But we'll come to that. Let me show you the room while Thomas hauls wood, because this room deserves showing. The infirmary hall is 90 feet long and 30 wide, aisled like a small church, because in a sense that is what it is. A church where the liturgy is performed on bodies. 12 beds stand along the walls, real beds, frame and rope and mattress, wool blankets, linen sheets, luxuries that the healthy monks in the dormitory are denied by rule, and the sick are granted by the same rule. Because Benedict wrote in that same 6th century document that care of the sick must rank above and before all else, ut sicut revera Christo, as if they were Christ in person. This is not sentiment. It is law, internal to this world, and it has consequences you can touch. The fire, burning all day. The meat, forbidden to healthy monks for centuries, served to the sick without apology. The warmth, the light, the beds. 4 beds are occupied this morning. Nearest the fire, Brother Morris, 71, the war hip. Here for the winter as much as for any single ailment, holding court from his pillows like a small bald king. Beside him, Brother Wilfrid, who is dying slowly of something in his stomach that no one can name, and who sleeps more than he wakes now, and whose sleep Anselm guards like a treasury, because sleep is the only hours Wilfrid spends without pain. Then an empty bed, then a lay brother called Hamo with a crushed foot from the woodyard, splintered, furious, bored. And at the far end, in the bed nearest the little chapel, Brother Cuthbert, whose leg is going to come off tomorrow, and who is at this moment doing the single bravest thing you have ever watched a human being do, which is eating his breakfast porridge in small, steady spoonfuls as if tomorrow were an ordinary day. And along the south wall, floor to ceiling, the other congregation, the shelves. You have to understand what a medieval infirmary shelves represent, because it is easy to sneer at this medicine from 6 centuries uphill, with our humours debunked and our leeches retired, and the sneer misses something enormous. Those shelves are the compressed experience of roughly 2,000 years of people watching very carefully what plants do to bodies. The theory underneath is wrong, gloriously wrong. 4 humours, hot and cold, moist and dry. The brain as a cold, moist organ that sleep serves by drawing warm vapours up from the stomach. Wrong. All of it. But the observations riding on top of the wrong theory are often dead accurate, because the men and women who made them had no machines and infinite patience. And when you have nothing but your eyes get very good. So, the sleep shelf. Anselm's pride. Second from the top, East End, where the morning light falls on it, lettuce. Not the pale, crunchy thing in your refrigerator, but wild lettuce. Tall, spiny, bitter, whose stems bleed a white milk that dries into a brown gum the old books call lactucarium, and which the Romans were already prescribing for sleeplessness 1400 years before this morning. The Emperor Augustus supposedly raised a statue to a physician who dosed him with lettuce. It is mild as these things go. It is where Anselm starts, always. Never start with the strong servant, he says, when the weak one can carry the load. Camomile in linen bags, for warm evening drinks and for stuffing into pillows. Batoni, which the books credit against nightmares and monstrous nocturnal visions, and which is sewn into little cloth amulets for the novices who wake screaming, and whether the plant does anything, the amulet does. A frightened boy with a defence in his fist sleeps better than a frightened boy with empty hands, and Anselm knows this perfectly well, and considers it medicine, and he is right. Valerian, this stinking root, in a lidded pot to keep the smell caged. For the sleepless, it is the second rung of the ladder, ground and steeped in wine. The infirmary cat, an otherwise dignified grey animal called Paulinus, loses his mind over Valerian, rolls in any spilled crumb of it, and has to be shut out on grinding days. Poppy. The white poppy grown in the physic garden inside its own low wattle fence, harvested in late summer, the seed heads scored with a bone knife and the tears of dried latex gathered on cloth. Opium, though the word Anselm uses is meconium, or simply the tears, kept in a small locked box, and the key lives around Anselm's neck, and the day he hangs it around yours will be the most frightening compliment of your life. Poppy is the third rung. Poppy in wine, poppy in syrups, poppy smeared on the temples, poppy in the sponges. The sponges deserve their own sentence because they sound like something out of legend, and they are entirely real, written up in manuscript from Monte Cassino to England. The Spongia somnifera, the sleeping sponge. A sea sponge soaked in the juices of opium, mandrake, henbane and hemlock, dried in the sun, stored, and then, when a man must sleep through the unendurable, wetted again in hot water, and held under his nose so that he breathes the fumes. Sleep through the nostrils, 9th century. Older, probably. Henbane. Hyoscyamus, the books call it. The villagers call it henbane and use it terrifyingly on their own toothaches. Handsome, sticky, foul-smelling plant. And this is the one Anselm makes you handle with washed hands and total silence, because henbane is a door that swings both ways, a little, and pain retreats and sleep comes. Too much, and the mouth goes dry, the heart gallops, the patient sees devils on the rafters, and then the breathing forgets itself. Every infirmarian in England knows a story about henbane. None of the stories are funny. Mandrake mostly as a legend on a jar. The real root is southern, expensive, rare this far north, and half the mandrake sold at fairs is carved bryony sold by liars. Hemlock, kept apart from everything, wrapped, marked, the leaf that looks maddeningly like parsley and kills like a closing hand, and vinegar, and wine, and honey, and salt. The undoers and the carriers, vinegar to the temples wakes a drugged man, wine carries the drugs in, honey makes children take them, salt scrubbed on the cheekbones calls a man back from the bottom of dwale. That is the arsenal. That is what medieval Europe had against pain and against the disease of watching, and the astonishing thing, the thing you should carry out of this whole story, is not that they had so little. It is that they used what they had inside a structure so intelligent that most of them never needed the shelf at all. Because ask yourself, 4 beds occupied, out of a community of 80, average age north of 40 in a brutal century. Where are the insomniacs? Where is the queue of hollow-eyed men outside Anselm's door? In your century, 1 adult in 3 would be lining that passage. Here, Anselm treats true sleeplessness, vigilia, as an illness. Perhaps a handful of times a year, and mostly in the guest house, mostly in travellers, merchants, men carrying money and lawsuits and dread. Among the monks themselves it is rare enough that a boy like you, awake 3 nights running, is not a statistic. He is a puzzle. He gets the infirmarian's personal attention and a warm cup poured before he arrives. Hold that thought. We're going to spend this winter finding out why. You come back in with the wood, 4 split logs riding your forearm, bark biting through the wool of your sleeve, and stack them by the fire, and Anselm calls you to the table, and on the table stands the black glazed jug, and beside it the horn spoons, and beside them a row of small stoppered flasks, each one tied at the neck with a different coloured thread. Because a man whose eyes are veiling cannot read labels but can count knots by touch, and he has been quietly rebuilding his whole craft around his failing body for 2 years without telling anyone, and you are only now beginning to see it. Now, he says, dwale. We build it together, we build it slowly, and while we build it, you will learn why every ingredient is here, because a recipe followed blindly as a spell, and we do not cast spells in this room. We make medicine. Medicine is a spell you understand. Outside it has started to snow, small dry flakes ticking against the horn panes of the window. In the far bed, Cuthbert has finished his porridge and is lying back with his eyes open, looking at the rafters, his lips moving. In the passage, muffled, the sound of the community going by to terse, sandals on stone, like slow, soft applause. Your hands, you notice, have stopped shaking. You're too busy to shake. That too turns out to be part of the lesson. Building dwale takes the rest of the morning, and it is the most frightened you have ever been while standing completely still. Anselm works the way the abbey prays. In order, out loud, nothing skipped. He sets the boar's gall on the table first, a small dark bladder, pungent, and tells you it is there as a bitter carrier, and because the old recipe says so, and that he has his doubts about it doing anything at all. But a recipe that has kept men alive for 100 years earns the right to 1 useless ingredient. Then the flasks, one by their knots. 1 knot, lettuce juice, thick, brownish, smelling of bitter grass. 3 spoonfuls. You pour at the table, against the marked cup. Fill, check, pour back, fill again, match. 2 knots, bryony. 3 spoonfuls, 3 knots, and here his voice changes, flattens, the way a road flattens before a bridge. Hemlock. The flask is smaller than the others. The liquid is green dark, and the smell that comes off it when the stopper is drawn is mousy, dirty, unmistakable, a smell your nose will know for the rest of your life, and Anselm makes you lean over and take it in deliberately, once, and says, "That, if ever a green sauce, a soup, a salad in this house smells of that, you knock it from the table with your own hand and apologise to the cook after. Parsley never smells of mouse. Say it." You say it. Parsley never smells of mouse. A rhyme against death, learned over a work table. 3 spoonfuls of hemlock. Your paw rides a hair above the line, and you stop, and pour back, and breathe, and pour again, and it kisses the mark, and Anselm, who cannot see the line from where he stands, watches your face instead, and nods when your face tells him it's true. Then Poppy, 3 spoonfuls from the locked box, the smell sweetish and strange under the vinegar of the room. Then henbane, and by now the ritual holds you like a hand on the back of the neck. Fill, check, pour back, fill, batch, then vinegar, then all of it into the black jug, and the jug set into a pan of water at the fire's edge to warm through, never to boil. Boiling is for men who want to explain to the abbot why the medicine died, and the whole room fills with a smell you have no word for, green and sweet and wrong, a smell with a shadow in it, and Paulinus the cat gets up from the hearth, gives the jug one long yellow look, and leaves the building. The finished dwale is strained through linen into a stoppered flask, and the flask is marked with wax and set in the aumbry. The locked wall cupboard and the horn spoons are washed twice, and the cups are washed twice, and the table is scrubbed with vinegar until your knuckles sting in the cracks, and then, only then, Anselm sits down heavily on the bench and lets out a long breath and looks like exactly what he is. An old man with failing eyes who just supervised the mixing of enough poison to empty a chapter house. "Tomorrow after prime," he says, 3 spoonfuls of that in a potel of the good wine warmed. He drinks by the fire until he sleeps. Brother Bartholomew does the cutting. Bartholomew is the barber surgeon who rides over from the town, a huge, kind, appallingly cheerful man with forearms like a smith. You will hold the leg. Morris will pray loud enough to cover the sound. He's done it before. And he spreads his trembling hands, will watch the breathing. That is the whole of my part now, and it is the part that matters most. So I am not complaining. You count the breaths with me. A sleeping man on dwale breathes 8, 10 times to the minute, slow and deep like a bellows. If it falls to 6, we salt his cheeks and call his name. If it falls below that, he pauses, we pray to be forgiven, and we mean it. You eat your dinner at midday in the infirmary, excused from the refectory, bread and bean pottage and a slab of actual bacon by the ancient mercy of the sick house, and you can barely taste it. The afternoon goes to ordinary work, changing Wilfrid's linen. So light now he is like lifting a bundle of kindling wrapped in skin. Rewrapping Hamos' foot while he grinds out complaints about the woodyard foreman in a whisper, because he can't shout in here. Carrying the piss spots, sweeping, hauling, grinding tomorrow's camomile. Your body works and works, and the work is the only thing keeping the door shut on tomorrow, and by vespers your shoulders are burning and your feet are 2 distant complaints and your eyes are full of sand again. And then Compline, the last office of the day, sung at dusk in the dark church, and it is short, and it is quiet, and it ends with the whole community standing in blackness, while a single voice sings the Nunc Dimittis. Lord, Now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace, which is a dying man's prayer sung every single night by living men on their way to bed, teaching them, night after night for their whole lives, that letting go is safe. Then the abbot sprinkles the line of monks with holy water as they file out. Cold drops on your forehead in the dark, and from that moment until prime tomorrow, the great silence holds the whole abbey, no words permitted, and 80 men climb the stairs and lie down in the long room. Together, in the dark, in the quiet, at the same hour they have lain down every night for their entire adult lives. And you lie there, 4th night, and you're so tired the mattress seems to tilt, and your mind, that traitor, lights every lamp it has. 6 breaths a minute, it says, salt on his cheeks. Parsley never smells of mouse. What if the 3rd spoonful rode above the line and you didn't see? You saw. Did you see? Fill, check, pour back, fill, match. He said your face told him it was true. What does your face know? Around you the breathing of 40 men goes long and slow. The candle burns at the end of the room. The wind works the shutters. Somewhere out in the black cold a fox screams once, a sound like a soul in trouble, and nobody but you hears it. You need to sleep. Tomorrow you hold the leg. Tomorrow you count breaths. And it is the kneading, of course, the desperate arithmetic of kneading, that stands on your chest like a dog and will not get off. At some point, without deciding to, you get up. This is allowed, barely. A monk may rise in the night to pray. You wrap your blanket around your shoulders and go down the night stairs, feet finding the worn troughs. And instead of the church, you turn along the passage, past the chapter house breathing cold, toward the one seam of light under the one door in the abbey, where a lamp is still burning. The infirmary, of course. The sick don't keep the great silence, neither, holy, do their keepers. You push the door softly. Warmth, vinegar and chamomile and smoke. The fire is banked low, a bed of orange eyes. Maurice snores like a distant sawpit. Wilfrid sleeps his guarded sleep. Hamo sleeps with his splintered foot on a cushion like a relic on display. And in the chair by the fire, wrapped in 2 blankets, wide awake sits brother Cuthbert, the man whose leg comes off in 8 hours, and on a stool beside him, feeding the fire one small stick at a time, sits Anselm. Neither of them look surprised to see you. Anselm points his stick at the empty stool on Cuthbert's other side, and you sit, and for a while nobody says anything, and the fire ticks and breathes, and this, though you don't know the word for it yet, this is the watch, the hour between sleeps, the oldest room in the human night, and what happens in it this night is going to teach you more about the cure for insomnia than every flask on Anselm's shelf. Cuthbert is 68. He was a mason's son from Ripon, and he came to the abbey at 19, and for 40 years before the leg, he was the cellarer's right hand and then the cellarer himself, the man who fed 80 monks and 200 servants and every traveller who knocked, through good harvests and through the hunger years, and there are old men in the village who cross themselves when his name is said, because in the famine of their childhood it was Cuthbert's grain carts that came. Now his right leg lies propped on a stool under the blankets, and the smell of it is in the room, faint, sweetish, patient, and above the blankets his face is calm the way a winter field is calm, everything that is going to happen already decided. "Can't sleep, boy," he says. His voice is a low rasp, ruined years ago by shouting across granaries. "No, brother, nor I." He tips his head at his own propped leg with something that is almost humour, though I have the better excuse. Anselm feeds the fire another stick. The flame takes it with a small crackle, and light climbs the walls and lies back down. And then Cuthbert says the thing that starts everything. He says it idly, the way old men hand you their heaviest wisdom, sideways, while looking at the fire. When I was a boy in Ripon, no one fought the night like you do. The night had rooms in it. You went through them in order, like a house. You wait. The fire ticks. Anselm has gone very still on his stool, and later you will understand that he heard the door of the lesson open, and stepped back to let the older man walk you through it. First sleep, Cuthbert says. That was the first room. You supped at dusk, you banked the fire, you lay down when the dark came, all of you together, the whole family in the one bed and the servants along the wall, and you slept. Hard. The day's work saw to that. My father laid stone from light to light, and I carried his hods from the time I was 8. Nobody in that house ever lay awake at the start of the night. Lying awake is a rich man's supper. You've to be fed and idle to manage it. He shifts the leg an inch, breathes through it, goes on. Then somewhere past the middle of the night you woke. Everyone woke, not startled, not afraid. You just surfaced, like a fish coming up to look at the moon. And that was the watch, the wakeful hour, and no one in Christendom thought it was a broken thing, boy. That's what you have to understand. It had no doctor because it needed none. It was as much a part of the night as the dark was. My mother would sit up and nurse whichever baby was newest. My father would mend a tool by the embers, or step out to look at the weather, or lie there and say his prayers, the long ones there's no time for by day. The old ones talked. Quiet talk, ember talk, the kind you can't have at noon. Neighbours, some nights, you'd hear through the wall, murmuring like doves. Some folk read, them as could. Some visited their wives, he says this with a dry glance that makes you look at the fire, and the church herself gave you prayers written for that very hour. And the physicians, tell him, Anselm, the physicians wrote that it was wholesome. They wrote, Anselm says from his stool in his lecture voice soft, that sleep should be taken in 2 parts, that a man digests his supper in the first sleep, and that the second sleep after the watch is the sweeter and the more restoring. It is in the regimens. It is taken for granted, the way the books take for granted that water is wet. First sleep, the watch, second sleep, dead sleep, and morning sleep, some call it. 2 loaves, and the wakeful hour is the space where the knife goes. And then you went down again, Cuthbert says. Second sleep, softer than the first, full of dreams. You woke from that one with the light and the birds, and you got up. That was a night. 60 years I've slept that way. Here it's the bell that makes the cut instead of nature. But it's the same 2 loaves. He turns his head and looks at you directly for the first time, and his eyes in the firelight are small and bright and kind. So when you lie up there in the dormitory at midnight with your eyes open, boy, your body is not failing. Your body is doing the oldest thing it knows. It has come up to the watch, same as every man in that room, same as my father by his embers. The difference is only this. They knew the name of the room they were standing in, and you don't. They sat down in it. You beat your fists on the walls of it and call it a prison. The fire settles. A log exhales a long soft hiss, and somewhere under the blankets Morris's snore changes key and resumes. "But I can't get into the room," you hear yourself say, and your voice comes out younger than you want it to. "That's the thing, brother. They woke from a first sleep. I never reached the first sleep. I lie down and the watch starts at once and never ends." And Cuthbert looks at Anselm and Anselm looks at the fire, and there is a silence with a decision being made inside it. And then Anselm says, "Tell me what happens from Compline, step by step, what happens in your head when you lie down. And because it is night, and because the fire is between you and the dark, and because tomorrow this old man's leg is coming off, and next to that no confession seems large, you tell them. The arithmetic, the counting of hours left, the watching of your own wakefulness like a man watching a wound, the fear of the bell, the fear of the shaken hands, the fear you get this far and stop, and Anselm finishes it for you, gently. The fear of failing, of Odo's turned head, of the spoon and the line, of being sent home to Brackenrig as the boy who couldn't. You don't answer. The fire answers, ticking. So, Anselm says. And he stands with the small grunt of an old man's knees and goes to his shelf in the half-dark, hands reading the jars by shape. Vigilia, the disease of watching. Now attend, because I will say this once tonight, and then we will spend a winter making it true in your bones. The disease is not in the waking. Every man in this house wakes in the black of night, and it harms none of them. The disease is in what you do with the waking. You have made the night into a courtroom, boy, and yourself into the accused, and sleep into the verdict, and no man ever slept in a dock. The cure, the whole cure, everything on this shelf is only a servant of it. The cure is to change what the night is. He comes back to the fire with a linen bag and a small pot, and he sets a pan of milk at the ember's edge, and while it warms he crumbles camomile into it, and a shaving of something from the pot, and honey, and the smell that rises is sweet hay and warm barns, and something faintly bitter underneath, and he pours it into 2 cups, not one, and hands one to you, and one to Cuthbert. Lettuce, he says, catching your questioning look at the bitter edge. A little. The mildest servant for the mildest task. Now, the rules. You will keep them from tonight, and you will keep them stupidly, without believing in them, the way a novice keeps the hours before he loves them, because the body learns by doing long before the heart consents. 1. He raises a finger. You do not fight for sleep ever again from tonight. If sleep does not come, you rise. You come here. There's always work by a sick bed, or a fire to sit at, or an office to say. The bed is for sleeping. The moment it becomes a battlefield, you leave it, and you return only when your eyes are closing on their own. 2. When you wake in the black of the night, and you will, all your life, you will name the room. You will say to yourself, this is the watch. Men have kept it since Adam. Nothing is wrong. 3. No counting. The hours are the bell's business, not yours. That is why God gave monks a bell, so that no man need lie in the dark doing sums. And 4. And here he sits back down, and his milk-white eyes find you with unsettling accuracy. You will tell me your fears by daylight at that work table, with your hands busy so that they are spent by nightfall. Fear kept secret all day comes to collect at night. It is the most punctual creditor in the world. You drink the milk. It is warm and sweet, and the bitterness sits under the sweetness like a stone under moss. Cuthbert drinks his. The fire burns down, and somewhere in the next hour, with the old mason's son telling a slow story about the famine winter and the grain carts, and the snow ticking at the hornpanes, and Anselm's stick feeding the embers 1 twig at a time, you fall asleep sitting up on the stool, mid-story, like a child, and neither old man wakes you, and Anselm eases you down onto the empty bed with a strength that would surprise the dormitory, and covers you, and you sleep 4 unbroken hours in the sick house of a Yorkshire abbey, with a flask of poison in the wall and the hardest day of your life ahead. It is the best sleep you've had in a month. The bed, you will realise later, was between Wilfrid the dying man and Cuthbert the condemned leg, and you slept in it like a stone. And there is a lesson in that too, and Anselm will make sure you learn it. Sleep does not come to the safest place. It comes to the place where you have stopped keeping score. Morning arrives as a hand on your shoulder and the smell of vinegar. For half a second you don't know where you are, and then you do, and then you remember what day it is, and your stomach drops through the rope of the bed. Prime is already sung. They let you sleep through it, a mercy that will cost something later. Odo keeps accounts, but that is a problem for another hour. The infirmary is full of grey window light and moving bodies. Brother Bartholomew, the barber surgeon, has arrived from town, and he fills the room the way weather fills a valley, huge, red-faced, smelling of horse and frost, and faintly of the wine he has very sensibly not been drinking. His instrument roll is open on the scrubbed table, and you make yourself look at it because Anselm told you once that a man who cannot look at the tools should not be in the room. 2 knives, one curved. The saw, short, fine-toothed, its wooden spine dark with handling. Needles, waxed thread. Linen in folded stacks. A leather strap with a buckle. Cautery irons already waiting in the fire, their tips buried in the orange coals like planted seeds. The fire is built high. A brazier has been brought in besides. Heat matters. A man in dwale cools like soup, and by the fire in the big chair Brother Cuthbert is drinking his death of a leg away in warm wine. 3 measured spoonfuls of yesterday's dwale stirred through a patelle of the abbot's own Gascon red, and he drinks it in slow sips, and between sips he is saying the psalms he knows by heart, and his voice gets slower, and the Latin gets softer at the edges, like wax near a flame, and Anselm sits in front of him on a stool watching his face the way a sailor watches sky. 10 minutes. The cup droops. Anselm takes it from his fingers. Cuthbert. Nothing. Louder. Brother Cuthbert. Nothing. Anselm pinches the lobe of the old man's ear, hard, twisting, a thing that would bring a waking man off the chair. Cuthbert's face does not change. His chest rises and falls deep, slow, deliberate as a bellows worked by a patient smith. Anselm counts, one hand raised, and you count with him, watching the blanket move. 10 breaths to the minute. 10. Good. Now, says Bartholomew, and everything that happens next happens fast, because speed is the mercy that matters most, and every man in this room knows it. They lift him, you at the shoulders, and it takes 3 of you to the table, onto the folded blankets. The strap goes around the thigh, high, and Bartholomew heaves it a notch tighter than seems possible, and the flesh below it goes pale. Morris, who has hobbled from his bed to a stool in the corner without asking anyone's leave, begins to pray aloud, the 51st Psalm, in a voice trained by 50 years of choir to fill stone spaces, and you understand now what Anselm meant. The prayer is a wall of sound, built on purpose, and behind it the work can hide. Your post is the leg itself, below the knee, both hands, full weight. He will not wake, Anselm murmurs at your ear, but the body answers without him. It will try to move. It is not him. Do not let it teach your hands fear. Hold the line, not the fear. Hold the line. The same words as the pouring. You brace. You will not get the details, because you did not watch them. You watched Anselm, and Anselm watched the breathing, his lips moving with the count. 10, 10, 9, 10, and you held what you held, and the sounds behind Morris's psalm were the sounds you had spent a month trying to unhear. The knife sound short, the saw sound long, terribly ordinary, a workshop sound, wood in the woodyard, and the smell of the cautery irons when they came hissing off the coals was the worst of it, and your arms shook with strain, and the body under your hand surged twice, blind and rootless, like a man turning over in deep water, and it was not him, and you held, and Morris's voice never wavered, Cor mundum crea in me, Deus, create in me a clean heart, O God. And then Bartholomew said done in the flat voice of a man setting down a full bucket, and the whole thing, knife to last stitch, had taken under 4 minutes. 4 minutes. That was surgery in the age before your age. Not ignorance, not butchery. A race, run by men who knew exactly how short the candle of the dwale was, and how much could be asked of a 68-year-old heart, and who had shaved every wasted second off the work, the way the chant had shaved every wasted syllable off the night. Speed was the anaesthetic's partner. The book said a strong man should be able to take a leg in the time it took to say a miserere, and Morris, you realised, dizzy, still holding. Morris was not only a wall of sound, he was the clock. Cuthbert's breathing. 9, 10, 9. He sleeps on, 40 fathoms down, through the binding, through the dressing, through being lifted, the three of you again, lighter now. A thought you put away from you fast, back to the warmed bed. Anselm salts nothing, calls no name. Let him have the whole night of it, he says quietly. The drink will carry him till vespers. When he wakes he will be in pain, and the pain will have a beginning, and a beginning is a great mercy. What cannot be borne is pain with no edges. You get outside somehow, into the passage, into the cold, and your legs take you as far as the cloister garth and stop, and you stand there in the falling snow with your heart going like a drum, and your sleeves marked with what your sleeves are marked with, and you shake, now, finally, permitted, all of you shaking at once, breath ragged, eyes streaming in the cold, and it is not horror, or not only. It is the discharge of a held thing. And behind you a door opens and Anselm's voice unhurried says, "Good. Do that here, where it costs nothing. Then wash and eat and come back. Wilfred's linen won't change itself, and tonight, boy, tonight you will sleep like a felled tree, and tomorrow I will show you why." He is right on both counts. That night, 5th night, you go down at Compline with the rest, and the dark takes you before your thoughts can find their courtroom, and the Matins bell hauls you up from a depth you had forgotten existed, and you stand in the black church swaying, singing, stunned with sleep like a proper monk at last, and afterward you go down again into the second sleep, the softer loaf, the one full of dreams, and you dream of all things, of pouring, a bright line of liquid rising in a cup, kissing a mark, stopping. True. And in the morning, at the work table, with your hands busy grinding camomile, Anselm gives you the why, and it is the first plank of the answer this whole story owes you. The body, he says, spends the day writing a debt, and sleep is how the debt is paid. Work writes it. Cold writes it. Fear spends it falsely. Fear is a thief that borrows the coin and buys nothing. Yesterday you worked, you held, you feared, and then in the garth you paid the fear out of your body instead of carrying it to bed. So you went down owing nothing but honest weariness, and honest weariness is the oldest sleeping draught there is, older than Poppy, older than Adam's rib. Every ploughman in that village sleeps on it nightly and has never once needed me. The rich man's vigilia and the scholar's and yours, boy, they're all the same disease, a debt of the body too small and a debt of the mind too large. We will spend this winter mending your ledger. He hands you the pestle. Grind, he says. Physic later. First, camomile. A week before Christmas, Anselm runs out of henbane. Not out exactly. Low. Low enough that the locked box and the small jar between them would not cover a bad accident. And an infirmarian, he tells you, buckling on the mindset like armour. An infirmarian stocks for the winter he fears, not the winter he expects. There is a woman in the village, Mother Alice, widow of the smith, who grows and dries what the physic garden cannot spare, and knows plants the way Anselm knows breathing, and she has henbane, and someone has to walk the 1.5 miles down to the village to fetch it, and Anselm's walking days end at the cloister door in this weather. So at first light after prime you're given a leather satchel, a written note you can't fully read, 2 silver pennies knotted in a rag, and the borrowed second best cloak of the infirmary, which smells of every man who has ever worn it. Stepping out of the abbey gate in late December 1373 is stepping off the edge of the engineered world. Inside the walls, time is cut and stacked like firewood, bells, offices, meals, the 2 sleeps. Outside there is only the light, and the light this morning is a low, reluctant grey coming sideways over the moor, and the cold is a different animal out here. Not the standing cold of stone rooms, but a moving cold, a wind off the high ground with sleet riding in it, that finds the gap between your hood and your collar within the first 100 paces and lives there for the rest of the walk. The track down the valley is frozen mud, ridged and rutted like a ploughed field turned to iron, and every step is a small negotiation, ankle tilting, breath hissing, your wooden-soled shoes skating on the glazed crests. You pass the abbey's own granges, the great tithe barn standing in the murk like a beached ark, big enough to hold a church service in, because this abbey owns most of what your eye can reach. Sheep runs on the moor, fisheries on the river, mills the village itself more or less. Everyone you are about to meet lives, in one way or another, inside the abbey's pocket. Keep that in your head. It shapes everything, including how they sleep. The village is 30 houses along one street, and you smell it before you see it. Wood smoke first, then buyers, then the sourness of the tannery pits at the far end, then bread. The houses are long houses, most of them, people at one end and beasts at the other under the same thatch, and this is not squalor, this is central heating. 2 oxen and a cow put out heat like a tiled stove, and on a January night the family end of a longhouse is warmer than the abbot's parlour. The windows are shuttered slits, the doors are low, chickens stand in doorways looking personally offended by the sleet. Mother Alice's house sits by the forge her dead husband worked, and the forge is going, her son runs it now, and the sound of it reaches down the street to meet you. The huff of the bellows, huge and rhythmic, like the breathing of the building itself, and then the hammer, tink, tink, tang, tink, tink, tang, iron answering iron. A sound so regular you could chant to it. Inside, her house is one room, and it is an education. The floor is beaten earth strewn with rushes. The fire burns on a raised hearth in the middle, no chimney, the smoke rising to find its own way out through the thatch. So the whole upper half of the room is a slow blue haze, and everything above head height, the beams, the hanging bundles, the flitches of bacon, is glazed black and shining like carved jet. You duck by instinct. Life here happens below the smoke line, in a warm amber layer about 5 feet deep, and after a minute your eyes stop stinging, and you begin to see what is hanging in that black upper world. Herbs, hundreds of bunches, an inverted meadow. She dries in the smoke on purpose. Anselm trades with her partly for that. Smoke-dried Bethany keeps twice as long. Alice herself is 60, built like a door, with forearms her husband would have respected, and eyes that price you in one pass. Abbey boy, Anselm's boy, cloak's too big for him, hasn't slept enough. She reads the note at arm's length, lips moving, grunts, and starts filling the satchel. And while she works, she talks, because out here talk is not rationed by any rule. And what she gives you, without knowing she is giving it, is the whole other half of the medieval night. The village goes down with the dark, she says. What else would it do? A rushlight, a peeled rush dipped in mutton fat, burns half an hour and costs money. A candle is for church and deathbeds. When the light goes, the work goes, and when the work goes, you lie down. Whole households in one bed, husband, wife, children in order of age, the servant girl at the cold edge, everybody in their day shirts, under wool and sheepskin, dogs on the feet if the dogs win the argument. First sleep takes them before the fire is fully banked, and past midnight the house surfaces, just as Cuthbert said. She wakes, always has, her mother did too. She'll poke the embers together, say her beads, look in on the cow that's due to calve. Her son will wake and mend the fire. 2 doors down, she says with a snort. Long Rob wakes and checks his eel traps by feel, in the pitch dark, mad as a March hare. Been doing it 30 years. An hour, a bit more, of emberlight pottering, low voices, and the house goes down again into the morning sleep, and wakes with the light or the cock, whichever is crueller. And then she says the thing you carry home like a coal in a pot. Sleepless, she says, when you ask carefully the question Anselm told you to ask, whether folk in the village ever suffer the watching disease. She has to think about it. Actually stop, hands in the herbs, and think. There's grief, of course. New widows sleep bad the first winter, and mothers with a sick bairn sleep with one ear till it mends or dies. And there's old Godwin's wandering wits. He's up at all hours, but that's his head gone, not his sleep. She shrugs. But lying awake fretting, night on night, a body that won't sleep in a man that's worked. Nay, that's a gentry ailment, lad. That's for folk with beds to themselves and time to listen to their own heads. Down here the day's too heavy to carry into the night. You drop it at the door because you can't lift it another step. The day's too heavy to carry into the night. She gives you the henbane wrapped and tied, seed and dried leaf, double wrapped, marked with a cross scratched in charcoal, and she takes your 2 pennies and gives one back. Tell Anselm his prices are a scandal and his valerian was damp last time. And then, at the door, she catches your sleeve, and her eyes do that pricing pass again, slower. You're the one that can't sleep, she says. Not a question. Village and abbey leak into each other, everything is known. Anselm's dosing you, lettuce and camomile and wise words. You admit it. She snorts, but not unkindly, and then Mother Alice, who cannot write her name, gives you the second plank of the answer, the one it will take your century 700 years and a research grant to rediscover. Cold your feet, warm the rest, tire the body, dark the room, and same hour every night, same as milking. A beast milked at odd hours dries up. A body bedded at odd hours does the same. There's no herb in my roof beats that, and I say it that sells the herbs. She shoves you gently out into the sleet. And walk back fast, boy. The weather's turning worse, and you're carrying enough henbane to put the whole abbey down for Advent. You walk back fast. The sleet has thickened into real snow, coming level on the wind now, and the last half-mile up to the gatehouse is head-down labour. thighs burning, breath tearing, the satchel clutched under the cloak like a stolen child. And when the porter lets you in and the wall cuts the wind, the silence lands on you like a blanket, and you stand in the gateway steaming, and you realize you are, for the first time in weeks, completely, gloriously, bodily tired, mind empty, ledger balanced, and it is not even Vespers yet. That night you sleep the 2 loaves whole, first sleep and second, with the watch between them soft as a held breath, and you begin, just begin, to suspect that the shelf of herbs was never the cure at all. The shelf is the ambulance. The cure is the shape of the life. You have no idea, walking in steaming from the snow, that within a month the henbane in that satchel is going to be at the centre of the worst night of your winter. But we'll come to that. The abbey has a Christmas first, and even the sleepless deserve a feast. Christmas in a great abbey is the one season when the machine of time runs hot. 3 masses on the day itself, the first of them sung at midnight, so that the whole community simply does not take its first sleep at all on Christmas Eve, and stands instead in a church blazing, actually blazing, with candles, more flame in one building than the village below will burn in a year. And the chant on that night is not the slow or pull of ordinary matins, but something with its blood up. And even you, sleepless connoisseur of night offices, stand in your stall with your neck prickling. Then feast follows feast through the 12 days, the kitchen court roaring, the smell of roasting meat rolling over the cloister like a warm tide, geese and swan at the abbot's table, beef and good ale even in the infirmary, where Cuthbert 3 weeks after the table sits propped and grey but alive, stump healing clean, God and Bartholomew be thanked, eating goose with the concentration of a man who has decided to go on living. And into the middle of this, on St. Stephen's Day, through the worsening snow, comes a guest. The guest house is its own world within the world, a stone hall by the gate where the abbey does its duty to travellers, and dukes and beggars have both slept in it, in rather different rooms. The guest this Christmas is a wool merchant of York, Master John Fairfax, 45, riding home from Newcastle with 2 servants, 3 horses, a strong-box and a lawsuit, and the snow has closed the roads behind him. And by the 3rd night of his stay, the guest master comes to the infirmary at the hour between Compline and true dark, apologetic, and asks whether Brother Anselm might wait upon a guest who has not slept. The servants say, properly in a month, Anselm takes you. Of course he takes you. He has been taking you everywhere since Advent, and by now you understand that you are not assisting at these visits. You are the visit's second patient. Master Fairfax has the best guest chamber, a real chimney, a real bed with hangings, wax candles, his own sheets carried in his own baggage because he trusts no linen he hasn't bought. He is a big man gone soft in the middle, richly wrapped, and his face is a lesson in itself. The eyes red-rimmed and glittering, the skin under them bruised-looking, the jaw tight, the fingers never still, drumming the chair-arm, twisting a ring, drumming again. You know that face. You have seen it in a basin of still water, in the grey of a dormitory morning. He talks for half an hour before Anselm asks him a single question, and the talk is the illness performing itself, the lawsuit, a partner in Calais who may or may not have cheated him, 40 sarplers of wool on a ship he has had no word of since Martinmas, a son who wants to marry unwisely, the roads, the snow, the strong-box. Does the Abbey Gate bar properly at night? He heard a noise on the stair last evening. It was probably nothing. It is always probably nothing. and then at last arriving at the point like a man arriving at his own funeral. And I lie down, brother, dog-tired, and the moment the candle's out my mind opens like a counting-house, and every fear I own walks in with its ledger, and I hear the watch cry midnight, and then 1, and then 2, and I do sums, brother. I lie in the dark doing sums of hours the way I do sums of money, and the total is always ruin. Anselm lets the silence sit for a moment. Then he asks his questions, and they are not the questions the merchant expects, and I want you to hear them, because this is a 14th century sleep consultation conducted by a master, and there is not one wasted stroke in it. When do you sup, and how much? Late, and largely, comes the answer. A man entertains, a man is entertained. And wine after, and wine at the sums some nights to blunt them. Do you work your body, Master Fairfax, or only your affairs? The merchant actually laughs. He has men to work his body for him, he says. He rides when the roads and trails off. And your chamber at home, warm as money can make it, a fire banked all night, he cannot abide a cold room. And do you sleep alone? Since his wife died, alone in a great bed with a lamp burning. Because, and here the big man's voice drops in a way that makes you look at the floor, 'cause the dark has gotten unfriendly, brother, since Margaret went. The dark and the quiet, the two of them together. And Anselm nods slowly and says, Master Fairfax, I can sell you sleep. I have lettuce and poppy, and I can pour you under any night you ask. And if you were to be cut for the stone tomorrow, I would do it without a qualm. But you would need it again the night after, and more of it by Candlemas. And by Easter you would be a man who cannot sleep even with poppy, and I will not build that man. What ails you is not in the flask. You have a rich man's day, sir, and it makes a pauper's night. Your body is idle and your mind labours. It should be the other way round. You eat like a lord at the hour a ploughman is already dreaming, and the supper sits up with you. Your room is warm as August, and no creature on God's earth sleeps well in August heat. Sleep likes a cold nose and a warm back. You have banished the dark with a lamp because the dark frightens you, and so the dark stays a stranger, and no man rests among strangers. And you keep no hours. In York I'll wager you bed at midnight one night and 9 the next as business bids. A beast milked at odd hours dries up. You keep your face very still. He has stolen Mother Alice word for word and pays her the tribute of not saying so. The prescription, when it comes, is the abbey itself in doses. While the snow holds him here, Fairfax will keep the hours. Supper early and light in the guest hall. No wine after Compline. He will walk every day, twice round the outer court and up to the gatehouse tower and back. Servants or no servants, snow or no snow, until his legs know they have been used. He will hear Compline whether or not he prays. The singing will do its work on you regardless. It is very indifferent to your opinions. His fire will be let die to embers at bedtime and his lamp put out, and against the unfriendly dark Anselm gives him not a lecture but a thing, a Bethany amulet, and a Psalter page prayer for the night hours, and whether the plant is medicine matters not at all. The hand that holds something is not empty, and when he wakes in the deep night, and he is to rise, wrap himself, and sit at the window, or say the prayer, or, Anselm says with a perfectly straight face, come to the church, where he will find 80 other men also awake at that hour and entirely unafraid about it, and see what company does to the arithmetic, and camomile with a very little lettuce, warm at bedtime. For your dignity, Anselm says, a man does better with a cup in the treaty. Master Fairfax stays 11 nights, snowbound, By the 5th, the guest master reports, he is sleeping his first sleep whole. By the 8th he has stood at the back of Matins twice, an enormous shape in a furred gown among the pillars, and wept once quietly during the psalms, which nobody remarked on, because the night office has been catching such fish for 800 years. He rides for York on the feast of Hilary, and he leaves the abbey a gift of money that makes the cellarer's eyes water, and he leaves you, though he never learns it, something better. Proof. You watched a man carry your own disease in through the gate, and you watched the shape of this life take it off him like a wet cloak, in 11 days, with no drug stronger than a bitter garden lettuce. Mark it, is all Anselm says, as you watch the horses diminish into the white lane. The flask treats a night, the hours treat a life. Now come inside, my feet are dead, and Wilfrid was asking for you. Wilfrid was asking for you. You go inside, and it is Wilfrid, gentle, transparent, dying. Wilfrid, who is about to teach you the one lesson of this winter that has no herb in it at all. Brother Wilfrid dies in the last week of January, and he takes 8 days doing it, and the abbey keeps him company for every hour of the 8. And this is the part of the medieval night that your century has lost most completely. So walk through it slowly with me. He stops eating first, which is how these things announce themselves. The body closes its accounts in order. Anselm does not fight it. There is a medicine for every season, he says, mixing honey water with a thread of poppy in it, enough to soften, never enough to steal the mind. And the medicine for this season is comfort and company. A physician who cannot stop fighting is only a different kind of coward. The bed is moved nearer the little chapel at the infirmary's east end so that Wilfrid can hear the offices through the wall, and the offices come to him when he cannot go to them. The community's chant arriving muffled through 4 feet of stone at 2 in the morning, faint and endless, like the sea heard from inland. And the watch begins. The real one, the one the word was made for. There is a rota, old as the house. No brother of this abbey dies alone, and no brother dies in the dark. Day and night 2 monks sit at the bed, relieved every few hours like sentries, and a candle burns, and the Psalter is read aloud, quietly, in relays, straight through, beginning again when it ends, so that the sound of a human voice saying ancient words simply does not stop. For 8 days, the way the fire in the kitchen does not go out. You take your turns. Everyone takes turns. You see men at that bedside who have not spoken to each other warmly in years, sharing a psalter by one flame at 3 in the morning, voices handing the verses back and forth, and whatever was between them waiting outside the door because the watch is older than any quarrel. Your turns fall more often than chance would give in the deep night. Anselm arranges the rota. You know he arranges it. He is dosing you with the hour itself. And here is what you learn, sitting those nights. The deep night has a texture, and it is not the texture you feared. 2 in the morning at a deathbed is quiet the way the bottom of a well is quiet. Pressure and stillness together. The candle flame stands up straight for an hour at a time. The stone hoards the day's small heat and gives it back grudgingly. Wilfrid's breathing gets a hitch in it, then loses it, then finds it again, and you learn to listen to it the way you learn to watch the line in the cup. Attention out, not in. You read the Psalms in your bad slow Latin, and the old man's fingers move on the blanket sometimes, following words he has said 50,000 times, and once, on the 5th night, he opens his eyes and finds you and says, perfectly clearly, "You're Anselm's sleepless boy," and you say, "Yes, brother," and he smiles, a small dry folding of the face, and says, "It's a fine hour, this one. I always liked it. You get it to yourself mostly. Look at it, boy. Don't spend your life in it looking at yourself," and closes his eyes. And that is the last full sentence Brother Wilfrid says on earth, and it takes you years to understand that it was the whole cure said in 2 lines by a dying man. The night was never the enemy. The mirror was. He goes just before Lord's on the 8th day, between one bell and the next, with the chant coming through the wall, and Anselm closes his eyes with the thumb as gently as smoothing a page, and the community sings him into the ground 2 days later in the frozen Orchard Cemetery, breath rising off 80 men like smoke off a fire, and life goes on, because in this century death is a member of the household, not an intruder, and grief here has hours and rites and work to hold on to, and that too, though nobody would put it this way for 600 years, that too is sleep medicine. You would think a boy who had trouble sleeping would sleep worse in the weeks after his first death watch. You sleep better. You cannot explain it to yourself at first, but the shape of it comes clear on the grinding bench, hands busy, the way Anselm said things would come clear. For 8 nights you kept the very hour that used to keep you. You sat inside the deep night, on purpose, with a task, with company, with a voice going, and the hour turned out to be a room after all, exactly as Cuthbert had promised by the fire, an old, plain, well-used room, with a candle in it, where people had been sitting since before the abbey, before the Latin, before the wheel. You'd been afraid all your life of a place that turned out to be furnished. The dormitory dark holds no courtrooms now. When you wake in the black, and you still wake, you will always wake. You name the room. This is the watch. Some nights you lie in it warm and let it carry you back down. Some nights you rise and go along to the infirmary and sit with whoever's sitting and stack a few sticks on the fire. Nothing is wrong. Men have kept it since Adam, which is exactly the point, of course, at which the winter decides to test the repair. Because in the 2nd week of February, on the coldest night of the year, someone starts hammering on the abbey gate an hour after Compline, and the words that come up the passage with the porter's boy, gasped out between sobs, are these: a child in the village, Alice's own grandniece, 4 years old, screaming at devils on the rafters, hot as a coal, dry as paper, and the mother, God forgive her, the mother trying to quiet the tooth pain and the fever both, has been smoking the child's gums with henbane seed the old way, and nobody knows how much the little one has swallowed. Henbane in a 4-year-old. Anselm is on his feet before the boy finishes, and his milk-veiled eyes find you across the firelight, and what he says is not comforting, and is exactly what you need him to say. Boots, both satchels, and boy, your hands are steady tonight, or they are nothing. Choose now. The night outside the gate is the kind that kills travellers, and you go into it at a half-run. No moon, snow underfoot frozen to a squeaking crust that takes your weight for a heartbeat, and then drops you through to the shin, so that every stride is a small betrayal and a wrench. The cold is past temperature. It is a pressure on the face, an ache in the teeth when you breathe wrong, and Anselm, 62, half-blind, is somehow keeping pace beside you with one fist knotted in your sleeve, because on this track tonight you are his eyes, and he tells you so in 3 words and then saves his breath. The porter's boy runs ahead with a horn lantern that throws a jogging cup of orange light 6 feet wide, and beyond that cup the world is nothing at all. Black moor, black sky, the wind coming off the high ground with a sound like cloth tearing slowly. Forever. 1.5 miles. You do it in what must be 20 minutes, and it costs like an hour of harvest. You hear the house before you see it. That is the terrible thing. Across the last field, through the wind, thin and rhythmic, a child screaming but wrongly, screaming on a clockwork, effortful, cracked, the voice already shredded and still going, and under it a woman's voice pleading with no words left in it. Then the door, and the heat and smoke of the one room slamming into your face, and the scene by the hearth that you will carry to your grave. The mother on her knees with the child in her arms, and the child, and this is what henbane does. This is exactly what the books say, and the books do not prepare you. The child is fighting her, arching, plucking at the air with both small hands, grabbing at things that are not there with total conviction, eyes blown wide and black, black as ink, the colour of the eye almost gone, face scarlet and bone dry when every fevered child you've ever seen has been slick with sweat. Dry as paper, the porter's boy said. The skin is burning and not a drop on it. The little mouth works and works, cracked lips, gummy, and what it says between screams is nonsense with grammar in it. Birds in the wall, take the birds out of the wall, and Mother Alice stands over them both, and Mother Alice, who prices everything in one pass, who has forgotten more herbcraft than the county knows. Mother Alice's face is grey, because it is her family's old remedy, and her family's child, and she knows precisely what is happening, and precisely how far past her it has gone. Anselm stops just inside the door, and does the thing you have watched him do all winter, and will imitate all your life. He stands completely still for the space of 3 breaths, and looks, and lets the room pour into him before he moves. Then he speaks, and his voice is the work-table voice, level as a sill. How much seed, and when? The story comes out of the mother in pieces, and Alice assembles it. Toothache for 3 days, the child frantic. No sleep in the house. And tonight the mother did what her own mother did. Seed on the hot stone, the smoke funneled to the aching gum. The old charm about the toothworm said over it. And it works, boy. Understand that it works. Henbane smoke will numb a gum. Half the market towns of England do it every winter, and mostly nothing worse follows than a strange evening. But the child was small, and the fever was already in her, and she was held over the smoke a long time because she fought, and the mother's voice goes to a whisper, and there were seeds after on the stone, and she was left a moment, and her hand. A moment, a 4-year-old's hand, a palmful of seeds, maybe, or 2. Nobody saw. Light, Anselm says. All of it, here. Rushlights, the lantern, a precious candle from Alice's chest, gathered to the hearth. He kneels, takes the small thrashing wrist, and his tremor, you notice with a distant astonishment, his tremor is gone, or beneath notice, the old hands closing sure as gates. He counts against nothing, against the rhythm in his own head, and you watch his lips move and stop. The little heart is not running, it is fleeing. He peels back an eyelid with a thumb. The black pupil swallows the light whole and gives nothing back, wide and fixed as a well. Hyoscyamus, he says to Alice, to himself, to the room, naming the enemy formally the way he taught you. A named thing is half-sized. Deep in, well then. And to you, without turning, say it back. What kills in henbane? Your mind is a white raw, and out of the roar the work table answers rise in order, because he drilled them into your hands on quiet afternoons for exactly this moment. Medicine is a spell you understand. The heat, the dryness, the galloping heart, and at the last, the breathing forgets itself. So we fight in that order, heat first. And the next hour is the fastest slow hour of your life, and it is all hands, all texture, all small brutal physical acts. Snow, satchels of it, your satchels emptied of physic onto the table, and filled at the door with the crusted snow of the yard, and the child unwrapped, over the mother's animal protest. Out of the swaddling heat she has been lovingly baked in, down to the shift, and cloths wrung in snow water laid to the neck, the wrists, the groin, change the moment they warm, and your part is the wringing and the carrying, kneeling on the earth floor, hands going from scald to ache to a deep red burn of cold and back. Water down your forearms, soaking your cuffs, the fire hissing where you drip. Then the emptying, feather to the little throat, Alice's practised grip, and what comes up, and among it, unmistakable, the small dark kidney-shaped seeds, 12, 20, each one a coal out of the fire, and Anselm grunts at each as if personally acquainted. Then milk, forced in sips between the screams, milk and more milk. Milk carries poisons out the door they came in, and honey water, and the long war of the small hours begins, keeping her cool, keeping her drinking, and above all as the thrashing slowly dulls toward something worse, toward a heavy nodding stupor, keeping her here. Because this is the ambush in henbane, and Anselm names it flatly so the whole room can stand guard against it. First the fire, then the sleep, and the sleep is the killer. When the raving burns down, the poison is not spent, it has only moved deeper, and now it will offer the exhausted body the one thing everyone in this house has been praying for all night, rest. And if she's let sink all the way down into that rest, her breathing, which forgets itself, will forget itself. So you, Thomas of Brakenrig, the boy who could not sleep, spend the blackest hours of the coldest night of 1374 doing the strangest work of your winter, keeping a child awake. It is a whole craft, and you learn it at speed. The voice, constantly, her name, Emma, Emma. Look now, songs, any songs. You sing half the Psalter to a farmhouse hearth, and Alice sings things considerably older than the Psalter. The soles of the feet rubbed hard, the cheekbones stroked briskly with vinegar salt, the same waking trick that calls men back from dwale, and the smell of it cuts the smoky room like a blade. Cold cloths renewed, the candle held safely off so its light moves, because moving light hooks the drowning attention like a lure, and the counting endlessly, Anselm's fingers at the small wrist and his lips moving, and twice in the dead hours the breathing goes long and shallow and wrong, and twice the whole house hauls her back up with noise and salt and cold, and her own furious, wonderful, life-saving temper. Somewhere in it the mother stops weeping and starts working, because Anselm gives her tasks deliberately, the warm milk, the wrung cloths. Your hands, mistress, no one else's, and you watch a woman being treated for the worst night of her life with the same medicine you were treated with. Something to hold, something to do, attention out, not in. The grey comes up in the smoke hole slowly, the way it does in February, less a dawn than a leak, and with it, the turn. You feel it before you could prove it. The small heart under Anselm's fingers coming down off its gallop, step by step, like a horse walked cool. The black pupils, when the candle passes, flinching at last, a thin ring of grey-blue iris surfacing like land. The skin under the cloths finding, unbelievably, its first sweat, and Alice touching it and shutting her eyes for a moment. And then Emma, aged 4, survivor of the oldest painkiller in Europe, looks at the candle you're so carefully moving and says, in the wrecked little voice of a tavern drunk, "Bird," but conversationally this time pointing at the flame shadow on the beam, at a shadow that is actually there. And Anselm sits back on his heels and lets out a breath that takes his whole frame down an inch and says, "There she is." They sleep her in shifts after that, real sleep now. Earned and safe. An hour down, gently roused, counted, down again, all through the morning, and by noon she is sleeping the plain, furious sleep of a sick child on the mend. And you and Anselm walk back up the frozen mile in the low white light, not speaking, your cuffs frozen to boards, your knees bruised, your hands cracked and screaming in the cold air, empty satchels flapping, and about halfway, at the bend by the tithe barn, the old man stops and turns his clouded eyes roughly toward you and says, "Your hands, all night, did you watch them?" And you realise you'd forgotten you had hands except as tools, and he nods as if you had answered and walks on. And that is the entire debriefing, and it is enough because the lesson has closed like an arch. Fear watched grows, fear worked shrinks, attention out, not in, the line, not the hand, the child, not yourself, the night, not the mirror. You climb to the gatehouse and you eat like a wolf, and you sleep that night 11 hours less the offices, and the Matins bell lifts you and puts you down again like a wave handling a swimmer, and Odo can turn his head as far round as an owl for all you care. Spring is coming. And there is one more thing this story owes you before it puts you to sleep. The view from the tower and the answer to the question in the title. Why it worked. All of it. Actually worked. The winter lets go the way Yorkshire winters do, grudging every inch. Lent arrives, and with it a hunger that is engineered rather than suffered. 1 meal a day for the healthy, fish and beans and the famous almond milk the kitchens conjure to make abstinence bearable. And you notice, keeper of ledgers now, that the whole community sleeps deeper in Lent, and Anselm confirms it with a shrug. A light supper is a sleeping draught, always was. The heavy board is the enemy of the pillow, and rich men pay physicians to tell them what the rule tells monks for free. The days stretch, the offices slide with them, because monastic hours breathe with the sun. Longer nights meaning longer sleeps in winter, the whole timetable flexing with the seasons like a living rib cage, and there is another quiet piece of genius your century will spend billions failing to imitate with light bulbs. These people never once fought the sun, they rode it. Cuthbert walks in April, a wooden leg turned by the same carpenter who mends the choir stalls, padded with wool felt, strapped with harness leather, and the first day he crosses the cloister garth on it, slow as a heron, the whole community finds reasons to be passing, and nobody applauds. Applause is not a thing here, but the silence has a shine on it. Emma from the village is brought up at Easter, walking between her mother and Mother Alice, to be shown to the infirmarian, small and loud and entirely herself, and she is afraid of Anselm's white eyes for 1 minute, and then sits on his knee and eats dried apple for an hour, and Alice and Anselm trade herb prices over her head like 2 old smugglers, and you grind camomile and listen, and are, you notice with a kind of wonder, happy. You sleep these nights the way the others sleep. 2 loaves and the watch between. Not every night. You are still you. There are nights before hard days when the courtroom tries to convene, and you rise and go along the passage and sit by the infirmary fire until the case is dismissed for lack of attendance. But the disease of watching has lost its grip, because the watcher has changed rooms, and on the eve of St. Mark, late April 1374, Anselm takes you up the tower. He has the right, infirmarian's ancient privilege, to survey the drains and the watercourses from above, or so he claims with a face of total innocence, and the sacrist gives him the key, and you climb, the two of you. 140 steps of tight stone spiral, Anselm's hand on your shoulder for the last 50, both of you loud as bellows, and come out through a low door onto the leads of the great tower, into wind and gold evening light, 120 feet above everything you have ever done. And there it is, laid out below you like the illuminated page of a book too big for any table, the whole machine, the church under your feet, cross-shaped, immense, the cloister tucked into its southern armpit like a child under a wing, and around the cloister the dormitory, the refectory, the chapter house, warming house, kitchens, each in its ordained place, the same plain, near enough, as 1,000 houses from Portugal to Poland, because this design was debugged for centuries and then simply copied, the way you copy anything that works. The infirmary east with its smoking chimney, the physic garden, green now, the poppy bed inside its wattle fence like a treasure in a pen, the great court, the granges, the fish ponds lying in the low light like dropped coins, the mill, the orchard with its quiet rows of graves, Wilfrid's new among them, turf already knitting, and beyond the wall the village, 1 street, 30 roofs, smoke standing up from the evening fires, and beyond that the moor going up and up into the last of the sun, and the sheep on it like grains of salt, and over everything, arriving from below in shreds on the wind, the sound of the world going to bed. A dog, a gate, a mother's voice calling something long and falling, the smith's boy dousing the forge in a distant hiss. Now, says Anselm, settling his back against the parapet, face to the warm stone. The question you've been circling all winter like a dog at a hedgehog. Ask it. And you ask it. Why does it work? Not the lettuce, not the poppy. He has taught you their measure, servants, ambulances, the thing itself. The reason 80 men below and 30 households beyond the wall lie down tonight and sleep in a century of plague and famine and war, while the merchant Fairfaxes of the world, with their feather beds and their wax candles and their locked doors, lie awake doing sums of ruin. Why did the medieval world, which got the humours wrong and the stars wrong and the toothworm wrong, get the night so profoundly right? Anselm is quiet for a while. The wind moves. A kestrel hangs off the tower's corner, adjusting. Count the cures with me, he says at last. You know them all now. You've lived every one. The dark, first. Real dark, arriving on time, undefeated. From the moment the sun goes, this whole valley dims like one room. The richest man in it cannot afford to banish night, and so no body in it is ever confused about when night is. Your age, boy, if I may speak across 600 years, your age lit the night on fire and then wondered where sleep went. The cold, second. Sleep likes a cold nose and a warm back. Every dormitory, longhouse and hovel below us supplies exactly that, and no more. The labour, third. The debt of the body, written large and honestly every single day, plough and hod and pestle and hill, so that the ledger balances at dusk and the day is too heavy to carry into the night. You drop it at the door because you cannot lift it another step. The hours, fourth, and this is the deep one, the bell, the rule, the milking, the same hour every night, for life. A body kept to hours becomes a clock itself and winds down unbidden. No one below decides to sleep any more than they decide to be hungry at noon. The deciding is the disease. We removed the deciding. The two sleeps fifth, and the watch between them named and furnished, so that the midnight waking, which is as old as man, is a room and not a verdict. No arithmetic, no courtroom, no failure, because nothing has failed. And the watch filled, mark it, filled, with embers and beads and quiet talk in the offices, the mind at that hour given ancient words to hold so it cannot pick up its own ledgers, the chant doing for 80 men below what the moving candle did for little Emma, hooking the drowning attention, holding it out, not in. The company, sixth. No one below sleeps alone, and almost no one dies alone, and the fears of the day are spent by daylight in chapter, in confession, at the work table with the hands busy, so that they do not come collecting at night. Your sentry, forgive me, I see it from here the way I see the village. Your sentry sleeps each in a sealed room, alone with a glowing clock, having spoken its fears to no one, and dares to call our medicine primitive. And last, he says, and here he turns his ruined eyes out toward the moor as if he could see it, and perhaps by now he can, in the only way that matters, last, the thing under all of it. We're not afraid of the night here, because we practice it. Every single day of this life rehearses letting go. The nunc dimittis at dusk, a dying man's words in living mouths, the holy water on your forehead like earth on a coffin, the great silence, the lying down clothed like the dead, and the rising again at the bell, night after night, year after year, 10,000 small rehearsals of surrender and return, until the body knows in its marrow the one thing your sleepless will never let themselves believe, that you can put yourself down wholly into the dark and be given back. That is the cure, boy. It was never in the flask. It was the whole shape of the life, and the flask only for the nights the shape was broken. Your physicians will find the pieces again some day. They will call the dark and the cold and the hours by new names, and they will be right. And they will still be missing the keystone because the keystone cannot be sold in a flask or written in a regimen. The keystone is a night you've stopped being afraid of. He pushes himself off the parapet. Below, the Compline bell begins, and the sound comes up past you into the enormous evening, and out across the fish ponds and the orchard, and the one street of the village, where, because you have sat in those houses, women are banking fires and children are being stacked into beds by age, and Long Rob is checking his eel lines one last time by feel, and the whole valley, wall and moor, monk and smith, is turning together toward the dark like a field of grain turning from the wind. "Come down," says Anselm. "I'm old, it's cold, and we have an office to sing, and boy." He pauses in the low doorway, a small bald silhouette against the stairwell gloom, and you can hear the smile you can no longer quite see. "When I am gone, and the veil finishes its work before that, you will keep this room and that shelf and these people. I have spoken to the abbot. You will be the one who pours." And he goes down the stairs ahead of you, one hand on the wall, counting the steps under his breath, because he has already learned this tower by touch, against the coming dark, the way he has taught you to learn the night, in advance, on purpose, without fear. So let this be your last picture of him, because it is where we leave him. Thomas of Brakenrig, 17 now, lying down in the long stone room on the eve of St. Mark in the year 1374, among 40 breathing men. Compline is sung. The holy water is drying on his forehead. The great silence holds the house like a hand cupped over a flame. He lies on his back on the straw, clothed, as the rule commands, under wool, and his hands ache in the good way, the paid way. From a day of grinding and lifting and the 140 steps of the tower, and his feet are cold and his back is warm, and the candle burns small and steady at the end of the room, Benedict's candle, so that no one need ever wake in perfect darkness and be afraid. He does not decide to sleep. He is unlearned deciding. He lies in the dark the way you lie in a boat, and the day goes out of him piece by piece. The pestle, the apple-eating child, the kestrel hanging off the tower, the old man counting stairs by touch, each thought arriving slower, each one lighter, thinning like the smoke over the village, and somewhere between one breath and the next, without a border, without a verdict, he is gone. First sleep, the deep loaf, the one that pays the body's debt, and past the middle of the night he will surface, so will you. You know that now, both of you. Somewhere in the small hours, tonight or another night, your eyes will open in the dark, and this exact moment, is where the whole story has been carrying you. So take it with you like a coal in a pot. Nothing is wrong. You have come up to the watch, that is all. The oldest room in the human night. Men and women have surfaced into this hour since before there were bells to name it, since before there were names. Thomas wakes in it and hears the bell, and goes down the worn stairs to sing in the dark with 80 others. His mother woke in it, in Brackenrig, and fed the fire. Mother Alice wakes in it and says her beads. Long Rob wakes in it and goes out under the stars to his eel lines, mad as a March hare, and sleeping like a king. Your own grandmother's grandmother's grandmothers woke in this same hour, in rooms you will never see, and stirred embers, and murmured to someone in the dark, and lay back down. The hour is furnished. The hour has always been furnished. It was only ever the mirror that made it a cell, so when you find yourself there, do what they did. Name the room. Let the clock alone. The hours were never your business. Keep your eyes soft. Let the mind hold something old and worn and out of yourself. A prayer, a poem, a list of quiet things. The way the monks held the psalms, the way the drowning attention is hooked and steadied by a moving flame. Attention out, not in. Centuries will pass, the abbey will fall. In 165 years, more or less, men with writs will come, and the lead will be stripped from the roof Thomas slept beneath, and the bells he set his life by will be broken up and sold, and sheep will graze in the nave, and the rain will fall on the choir stalls until the carved wood is gone into the ground with the men who slept in the orchard. The physic garden will vanish under grass. The dwale recipe will curl quietly in a manuscript in a library waiting 300 years to astonish someone, and the night itself will be conquered slowly and then all at once. Candles, then lamps, then gas, then a switch on a wall, and the dark that arrived on time for 100,000 years will simply stop arriving. The two sleeps will fade so completely that when people wake at 3 in the morning, as their bodies have always done, as your body still remembers how to do, they will lie in the electric silence and believe themselves broken. But the cure did not die with the abbey. It was never in the walls, any more than it was in the flask. Look at it, one piece at a time, and see how much of it is still lying around you, right now, waiting to be picked up. The dark is still free, The cool room is still free. The kept hour, the same time every night, same as milking, costs nothing. The honest tiredness of a used body is still the oldest draught there is. The light supper, the banked fire, the warm milk with honey that Anselm set on the bench before the boy even walked in, you could make that tonight in your kitchen in 4 minutes. The fears told by daylight so they do not come collecting after dark. The something to hold, the something to do. The company, even remembered company, even a voice, even this voice, going on quietly in the dark like the psalter at Wilfrid's bed, in relays, so the sound of a human voice simply does not stop. Some things do not change. The body still writes its debt every day and still asks every night to pay it. The heart still slows towards sleep like a horse walked cool. The deep night is still quiet the way the bottom of a well is quiet. Pressure and stillness together, and it is still a fine hour, and you still get it to yourself mostly. And you, listening now in your own dark, in your own century, you are further down than you were when we began. You know it. Your breathing has gone the way Cuthbert's went over the wine, long phrases, soft edges, wax near a flame. Good. Let it. You are warm enough. You're safe enough. You're tired enough. Honestly tired. The paid kind, and that is more than enough. The day is done and it was too heavy to carry any further anyway, so set it down at the door. It will keep. Everything will keep. Let it come, the way it came for the boy on the straw. Let the room dim like one valley at dusk. Let the last thoughts arrive slower and lighter and thinner. Smoke over a village, a kestrel letting go of the wind. Let the watch, if it comes tonight, be only a furnished room you pass through on the way to the morning sleep, the softer loaf, the one full of dreams. Somewhere, always, it is 2 o'clock over a dark valley, and a bell is about to ring, and 40 sleepers will rise and sing and lie back down unafraid, and their whole long night says the one thing it has been saying for 600 years, the keystone, the cure, the thing under all of it. You can put yourself down wholly into the dark and you will be given back. Good night.